Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to this week's F1 News Roundup. Now I've got a total of 7 stories for you today, including 3 in the quick rundown and a look at the results from Friday's practice session. So with so much to get through, let's crack on with it. First up today, Sebastian Vettel has said that he feels Aston Martin's response to what was a difficult weekend for the team in Bahrain has been positive. It was a tough start to the season for the team as a whole as they left secure with just 1 point on the board and appeared to be behind Ferrari, McLaren and AlphaTauri on pace. But it was Vettel who seemed to struggle the most, having been knocked out during Q1 on Saturday and of course got slapped with a penalty after crashing into the back of Esteban Ocon in the race. All of that meaning that the German only managed to finish 15th on his debut for Aston. And whilst Vettel admits that it wasn't a great weekend overall, he has been impressed by the team's reaction and is now focused on closing the gap to the teams ahead. We went through basically everything that happened and I think the response has been quite positive. We learned a little bit about our car to understand a little bit more where it wants to be and try and take it from there. We are not quite where we expected or wanted to be, but it is what it is. We have to tackle it bit by bit and take it one step at a time. That's what it feels like we are doing. I am willing to put everything in I can to try and understand and help and have a better race this weekend. I think we are well prepared and we'll see what we get. When asked, Vettel added that the spirit within the team is great, and as he is feeling comfortable, he is enjoying his work right now. It is also worth a mention that Otmar Szafnauer and Aston Martin are pushing for a possible change to the regulations mid-season. Now, Szafnauer has been vocal about how he feels about the 2021 changes and how they've disadvantaged the team, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot more information on this over the next few days and weeks, but according to Ted Kravitz, Aston are looking for clarification as to whether it was the FIA that solely set the rules, or whether the commercial rights holder had any kind of influence, which Aston would not be happy with, because it should be the FIA who make the rules alone. So they want all of that clarifying first before they decide on what steps to take next. However, Ted did say in Sky's coverage that it probably won't go anywhere at all because the aero rules can only be changed mid-season if there is an issue when it comes to safety and not just because one team has got it wrong when it comes to the regulations. Not much to go off on this one at the moment. I just wanted to give it a quick mention. We'll see what happens, but this story could be well worth keeping a very close eye on. Next up, this year's Canadian Grand Prix continues to look under threat with reports in Canada claiming it looks set to be cancelled for 2021. On Thursday, Radio Canada reported that the race had been called off due to concerns over the risk associated with having Formula One personnel mixing with circuit staff and volunteers, something that would be unavoidable if the race did go ahead as planned. But when approached by motorsport.com for comment, a spokesperson for the promoter moved to clarify the Radio Canada claims. What Radio Canada is referring to is a document of recommendations from public health. We as an organisation have not had confirmation from our public health officials and won't comment until we get an official confirmation. That statement was backed up by the sport with an F1 spokesperson telling Racer, "We are continuing our discussions with the promoter in Canada and have no further comment." So, no comment is the official line as of right now. But with the circuit being a semi-permanent venue, construction has got to start sooner, so a decision will surely be made imminently. And despite Stefano Domenicali's reassurances that the sport could form a bubble to help protect people, and the head of public health previously suggesting it would be possible for the sport to go ahead but further discussions were needed, the uncertainty over the event remains and all the noises seem to suggest the race will be cancelled for the second successive year. As covered previously, should the Canadian Grand Prix be called off, it is believed that a return to Turkey is the sport's plan B, and it would actually make a lot of sense as a replacement venue too, because Istanbul Park is on the freight route between Azerbaijan and home for F1 personnel. Moving on, and F1 boss Stefano Domenicali has ruled out the idea of 2-day weekends in the future. Last year, the sport held a 2-day event at Imola with a single practice session taking place on Saturday morning with qualifying later that day, and the race, as usual, was on Sunday. The trial was considered a success by teams as it resulted in a reduce in costs across the event, and it also allowed personnel to arrive at the venue later, which reduced the workload, something that could well appeal as the calendar continues to expand. However, despite that, Domenicali won't be introducing the idea permanently in the future, as race promoters, I suppose understandably, wanted as much track time across the weekend as possible, and speaking to Formula1.com, he simply stated, All the organisers really wanted to have a full experience for the people and for the crowd, so we need to respect that. It should also be added that with the trial of sprint qualifying at 3 events in 2021 likely to go ahead, and if they are a success, their possible permanent introduction at some of the races in the future, a 2-day weekend would not really be a viable option for the future. Moving on, and having a partner team is not considered a good deal right now for Renault, according to Alpine boss Luca De Meo. With McLaren making the switch to Mercedes power for 2021, the Renault power unit is only currently being run by one team, and many feel that could leave the manufacturer at a little bit of a disadvantage versus its rivals. Rumours have been circulating for a while now that claim Williams could be looking at perhaps becoming a customer of the French manufacturer, but Renault and Alpine have both stated that neither of them currently has the internal structure to allow them to deal with any potential issues that could be posed by having a customer team. And speaking about the pros and cons of supplying power units to another team, De Meo said, "Of course, theoretically, it's better when you have your engine used by others because you can maybe exchange data. But the current conditions, especially economical conditions, are actually not very favourable. So, the price other teams pay to access the technology of people like us that make the initial investment is not a good business case. I said that already a lot of times. I don't want to enter into the numbers, but I can tell you this is not a good deal." Laurent Rossi added to this by saying that the team would much rather focus on developing its chassis and engine than have to worry about a customer team and the, quote, dangerously expensive costs involved. Right then, I've got 3 more stories for you to quickly fly through before we get on to the practice results. The plans for a Grand Prix in Miami appear to have moved a step closer after city commissioners voted in favour of a new resolution. The resolution will apparently result in a memorandum of understanding between the city, the Miami Dolphins, and F1 to hold a Grand Prix on a track constructed around the Hard Rock Stadium. Race organisers have also pledged $5 million to the city over the course of a decade to fund community benefits programs and businesses, and a STEM, that's a science, technology, engineering and maths program for local children, would be implemented by F1. However, there could still be a way to go as the race continues to face opposition, with resident Brendan Martin Providence telling WSVN that the city council had flip-flopped on the decision, leaving residents angry, adding, quote, "We just want them to know nothing with us has changed. We just don't want it in our neighbourhood." Formula One's technical director Andrew James will leave his role at the end of May. James will step down following a restructure of staff and bring to an end his 25 years working within the sport. James has been instrumental in creating and implementing many of the technical systems the sport uses and helped to establish F1's broadcast centre. Ross Brawn praised James's efforts during his time in F1 and described him as a pillar of our organisation, adding his contribution to the sport has been immense. And Daniel Ricciardo has moved to clarify the comments he made regarding Formula One's social channels and use of crash replays. As covered last week, the Aussie was massively critical of how many replays the sport had shown, especially of Romain Grosjean's Bahrain crash, calling those involved idiots. There were other words, but idiots was the big takeaway from that. However, whilst his opinion of it all remains largely the same, Ricciardo feels the words he used were too aggressive, and he, quote, should know better as well, being in the sport as long as I have. He added that he feels the sport is better than just showing replays of crashes, and there were far better stories to be told last season. And finally for today, let's have a look at the results from Friday practice, starting with FP1, which was a bit of a messy session to say the least. There were technical issues for F1, not just on the broadcast side of things, but at the circuit as well. But from a TV point of view, there were very few replays, onboards, and much less information than we are used to. As a result of all of that, I cannot find a reliable source for tyre information, so unfortunately, the FP1 table will not include the tyre each driver used to set their fastest lap. But anyway, Valtteri Bottas topped the first session of the weekend with a 1:16.564, 0.041 seconds clear of his teammate, with Max Verstappen less than 0.06 of a second behind. It is so close between them three already. Charles Leclerc was 4th for Ferrari, with Pierre Gasly in 5th and Carlos Sainz in 6th place. Fernando Alonso, 7th place for Alpine, nearly 9/10 of the second off the fastest time by Bottas, with Stroll in 8th and Latifi in 9th place. Daniel Ricciardo was 12th for McLaren, with George Russell in 11th for Williams. Yes, I know it's only practice, but what a great start to the weekend for them. And of course, by 12th for Ricciardo, I clearly mean 10th, given that 10th comes between 9th and 11th. But anyway, Kimi Raikkonen was 12th for Alfa Romeo, with Lando Norris in 13th and Sebastian Vettel down in 14th place. and he's followed by Antonio Giovinazzi in 15th, Sergio Perez 16th, and Esteban Ocon 17th. Those two collided out on track, and that ended both of their sessions and, of course, brought out the red flag. The stewards did investigate the incident, but no further action was taken as both drivers agreed that neither were at fault. Nikita Mazepin had a couple of spins on Friday morning, with the last one resulting in him ending up in the wall on the exit of turn 18, right at the pit entry as well. And he wasn't the only one to spin. Lots of spinning going on out there, some tricky track conditions. Mick Schumacher was in 19th place, 7/10 off his teammate, with Yuki Tsunoda rounding out the field, 3.2 seconds off the pace with 11 laps on the board. As for FP2, Valtteri Bottas also topped that session with a 1:15.551 this time, and was just 100th of a second clear of his teammate. But Bottas was on the medium tyre, according to the official F1 data. Obviously, there were technical issues in the morning, but I can only assume if they've put that information out, it must be correct. So Hamilton on the soft tyre and Bottas on the medium. Pierre Gasly was third in the AlphaTauri, just under 8/100ths of a second off the fastest time by Bottas, with Carlos Sainz in fourth and Charles Leclerc fifth. Charles Leclerc crashing right at the end of the session at turn 18, just correcting a snap of oversteer, and the car went into the wall at the final corner. Sergio Perez was sixth for Red Bull, so a better afternoon for him, with Yuki Tsunoda in seventh and Lando Norris in eighth. And then we've got Antonio Giovinazzi and Lance Stroll rounding out the top 10. Esteban Ocon was 11th, with Nicholas Latifi again right up there in 12th place, 1.2 seconds off the pace, 29 laps for him, with Fernando Alonso in 13th and Max Verstappen only 14th and 5 laps on the board after stopping on track with technical problems, which Red Bull later said was a suspected driveshaft issue. Sebastian Vettel was 15th, with George Russell in 16th and Kimi Raikkonen 17th. Daniel Ricciardo was only in 18th place come the end of the session, but it's got to be said several drivers had lap times deleted, so when it comes to some drivers, for example in this case Daniel Ricciardo, that lap time is not totally representative of his pace, and some other drivers who had times deleted include Leclerc, Gasly and Tsunoda. Mick Schumacher was 19th for Haas but got 28 laps on the board, so a fairly good afternoon for him, and it was Nikita Mazepin who rounded out the field in 20th place, 2.3 seconds off the pace and 16 laps on the board. That is it for this week's news roundup then, but you can, as always, let me know your thoughts on any of the stories featured today down in the comment section. And I will be back live on Sunday with Dan for some immediate race reaction. But in the meantime, if you did enjoy this video, then please do leave a like, as it really helps out the channel. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.